All right, so welcome to chapter 4. We're going to be talking about securing the interior. So we've built our castle walls, we've stationed our guards at the gate. Now we must turn our attention inside. If an attacker slips past the firewall, what do they find? If every door is unlocked and every vault is open, well, our outer defenses were meaningless. Today we're going to learn how to lock down the systems themselves through hardening, patching, and endpoint protection. So our missions for today are going to be what is system hardening and understand why default configurations are a security nightmare. We need to then talk about attack surface and how to shrink it. We're going to master patch management, specifically the race between a patch release and a hacker's exploit. We need to talk about the principle of least privilege to manage administrative rights. And then we'll finally finish off with antivirus and endpoint detection and response. So let's go back to our castle analogy. We have the walls, physical security. We've hired the bouncer, the firewall. But imagine a spy managed to climb over the wall. If the spy finds the treasury door unlocked and the king's battle plans left on the table, that's an easy win. So we need to secure the interior by locking every internal door, and it means ensuring that only the king has access to the vault. We need to assume the outer wall will eventually be breached and fail. So we need to make the inside hostile to the attacker as well. So that brings us to system hardening. System hardening is the process of securing a system by reducing its vulnerability surface. Operating systems like Windows or Linux are designed for usability, not security. So out of the box, they have everything turned on. File sharing, remote access, games. It makes the life easy for the user. But we need to get to a hardened state. To harden a system, we need to turn everything off that isn't strictly needed. We needed to configure this system for security first and for functionality second. So we talk a lot about attack surface. What is it? Well, it is the sum of all the different points where an unauthorized user can try to enter to extract data. More software equals more bugs, which equals more vulnerabilities. So every single application you install opens a potential window for an attacker. If you don't need it, don't install it. And take this seriously, please. So how do we practically reduce the attack surface? Well, we're going to take 3 steps. Step 1, remove bloatware. Uninstall any pre-installed games, trials, or helper apps. These are often unpatched and highly unnecessary. We're going to disable services. We're going to turn off any background service we don't use. If a server isn't printing, let's turn off the print spooler. Finally, we're going to close the ports. We're going to use the host firewall to block incoming connections to any application that doesn't absolutely need it. Now that we've, now we move to the most critical daily task of the defender, patch management. This is a daily battle against software bugs. Now, why is this so important? Well, software is human. Humans write the code, and humans make mistakes. These mistakes create vulnerabilities. Now a patch is simply just a piece of code released by the vendor to fix the mistake. But here's the scary part. As soon as a patch is released, hackers are studying it to reverse engineer the vulnerability. They know where the hole is now. You must install the patch before they finish building their weapon to attack it. Let's look at the life cycle of a bug. So first we must find it. We must discover it. Once we find the flaw by the researchers, or worse, even the bad guys, it becomes what we call a 0 day. This is where the hackers attack. They're attacking because there's not a patch yet. And this is a danger zone because how do you protect something when there's not a patch? So once a patch is released, the vendor will then fix the code and the race begins immediately for us to patch the system. Once we patch the system, we need to update and, well, hopefully the risk is finally mitigated. Your goal is to shorten the time between steps 3 and 4 as much as possible. And if the bad guys find the discovery before the patch is released, well, that's even worse because we may not even know about it until the 0 day gets announced. You can't just click update all in a corporate environment. So please do not auto update blindly. A bad patch can crash a critical server or even stop production. So the golden rule is always to test your patches on non-critical systems first, because you can't fix everything at once. Focus on critical security updates like remote code execution and prioritize your public-facing servers and end-user workstations, which are most likely to be attacked. Next, we need to talk about accounts and privileges. In our castle, this asks, well, who holds the keys? Well, the administrator or root account are the keys to the kingdom. This account can do anything. Delete logs, install software, disable the antivirus. So the risk here is if you browse the web as an admin and click a malicious link, that malware runs as admin. It inherits all of your power. It doesn't need to hack the system. You just gave them the keys. Which is why we use the principle of least privilege. Now, this is how we fix this. Users should be granted only the minimum permissions necessary to perform their job. Even IT staff should use a standard account for checking email and browsing the web. You only log in as the admin account when you are actively performing a specific configuration task. And this is where a lot of IT mess up. Now, modern operating systems help us do this without constantly logging in and out. So Windows has what we call the user account control. This is when the screen dims and asks for permissions. It temporarily elevates the standard user to do an admin task. Linux, on the other hand, we use sudo, super user do. It is a command prefix that elevates our privileges for just that single command. Use these tools, don't disable them. Now let's look at the endpoint protection. This is the digital immune system for your devices. So we've moved beyond basic antivirus. Traditional antivirus is signature based. It compares the files against a list of bad known files, and it's like a flu shot for last year's flu. It misses new 0-day attacks but knows about the previous ones. This behavior, my bad, just 1 second. All right, now let's move on to what we do now. EDR, endpoint detection and response. This is behavior based, okay? It watches what programs do. If Notepad suddenly starts trying to encrypt your hard drive, EDRs know, well, that behavior is not right and tries to stop it, even if it's never seen that specific virus before. So it's not signature based, it's behavior based. And so for an antivirus to work properly, it must know what the virus was. An EDR just needs to know the behavior of a certain file so it knows what to determine as an anomaly and what is normal. Now, we've already talked about network firewalls. Those are our guards sitting at the gate, allowing people in and out of our kingdom. But we also need what we like to call host-based firewalls. These protect an individual room, a laptop, or a server. And we need both because if the attacker breaches the perimeter, maybe scaling the walls, the host firewall will prevent them from jumping from computer to computer. And this is what we like to say is going to stop lateral movement. This is absolutely critical for laptops that leave the office and connect to untrusted networks like coffee shops. Okay. So having a host-based firewall is almost like having a home security system in every house within the village itself. The firewall is going to take care of the local, while the overall firewall is still standing at the gate, making sure all traffic that enters and leaves the kingdom is either allowed or denied. Now, the other concept would be is encryption at rest. Okay. Now, we need to encode the entire hard drive so that data is unreadable without a key. Now, this is just going to help us mostly with theft protection. If a CEO leaves their laptop in a taxi, the thief gets a free laptop, but they don't get any of the company data. So we'll use tools like BitLocker with Windows or File Vault with Mac, or even Lux with Linux. Okay, make sure that we encrypt that data so that way if the tools do get lost, the data isn't lost with it. Now here's our classic war story for Chapter 4. It's the admin. A university server was breached and 50,000 records were stolen. Now the database software was installed with a default username of admin and the default password of, well, admin. So it wasn't sophisticated. A simple bot script guessed these credentials in about a half a second. And as the movie says, this kind of combination an idiot would have on his luggage. Right? Let's change our default passwords, guys. So what was the main failure here? Well, they didn't harden. The very first step of hardening is to change default credentials. And so a checklist failure, a simple hardening checklist would have caught this immediately. Never ever deploy an out-of-the-box configuration to a live network. Here's a big thing. Now, in Lab 4.1, you're going to practice this. Now, you're going to do a little bit of server hardening. So what I want to do is I'm giving you a scenario. You have just been giving a fresh Windows Server 2022 box instance for an HR department. You're going to perform a basic hardening audit before we dare connect it to the production network. So here's your steps that I would recommend. How about we disable the guest account? Maybe we rename administrator account to make it harder to guess. What about a software audit? What are 3 pre-installed apps that HR doesn't need that's already built into Windows 2022? Like Xbox Game Bar. I don't think they need that. What about a service audit? We talked about the print spooler, but are there others? And then updating. Manually run Windows Update, record how many patches are missing, and get them updated. So your future checklist deployments, keep this checklist in mind. User info, network including the host firewall, close any unused ports, and then system. Install all the patches, remove the bloatware, enable encryption. This is a very simple list, but will protect you against 90% of the attacks automatically. So to summarize Chapter 4, we talked about hardening. We turn off unnecessary features to reduce the attack surface. We patch the system because it's a critical daily task, and we test before we deploy. We never work as admin. We use tools like sudo and UAC. We'll use host-based firewalls and EDRs to back up our perimeter because it's not when they get past our firewall, but if they get past our firewall, it's when. I always say it backwards. And then encryption, protect the data physically, even if the device is stolen. So that's a wrap for securing the interior. If you have any questions about hardening, patching, or even the lab, let me know. Next time, we're going to discuss the enemy directly because we're going to be talking about malware and threat intelligence. I'll see you for Chapter 5.